All right, so I waited a while to talk about the subject, and that is the assassination attempt of President Trump and the assassination of Charlie Kirk. Now, I was on protective security details in Iraq and Afghanistan, worked for Blackwater. So I protected U.S. diplomats and ambassadors. And then I was also a federal agent on a protection detail for a cabinet level secretary. And so as a federal agent on a cabinet level secretary, we did the same functions as like what Secret Service would do, but at a much smaller scale, all right? So when you have a smaller detail of people, meaning the smaller amount of people that are working that protection detail, you have to do, one individual person has to do multiple jobs. Where when you have a Secret Service, because they have so many resources, I mean, they're like probably the largest protection detail in the world. I mean, I'm not in the U.S. that I know of, not sure about other countries, but pretty sure they are. And they have the most assets, probably have some of the best training. I think the State Department protection detail is better than the Secret Service detail, all right? And there's reasons for that, but we won't get into that now. Now, the purpose of this video is I'm not gonna sit here and talk bad about the Secret Service or Charlie Kirk's detail, all right? What I wanna do is tell you how protective security operations and executive protection operations go, okay? What a particular mission consists of and how it's supposed to be done, all right? Now, if you know about this, then you know about this, right? If you don't, this is really why I'm making this video, because a lot of misinformation. When you don't really know something, that's when you get into your opinion, all right, or your feelings, and then you think you're an expert because you heard some YouTuber try to analyze Charlie Kirk's assassination video and how all these different things are happening and how multiple things are involved. No, we're not talking about that. We're talking about the operational aspect on how you plan a mission, what goes into it, all right? So for instance, on a protection detail, you have three parts, okay? Your one part, depending on who the protectee is, depending on the budget, depending on the size of the protection detail, you might have a residential security team. So those are gonna be guys that are gonna be, their whole job is to stand guard at where that VIP, that protectee lives, okay? So for instance, if you talk about the president, he lives at the White House. So he's gonna have the main core of his protection detail or his protection assets, which would probably primarily be Capitol Police, providing the outer perimeter and most of the perimeter around the actual White House, and then you're gonna have the Secret Service agents that are inside, right? So that's one part of it. Now the second part is gonna be the actual protection detail that is around him at all times, like the ones that are closest to him, whoever that protectee is, all right? So if you ever watch the president walking down the street or shaking hands, you're always going to see those Secret Service guys behind him, and you can always pick them out. A lot of times they're wearing sunglasses, they're never smiling, they might have earpieces in, but you can always spot them, okay? And of course they might have their more undercover guys or more clandestine type guys that are in the crowd that are trying to dress normal. You might not see this, but I'm saying you're going to definitely see the close protection detail of the president around him, all right? Same thing with private security, like, if you see a Bill Gates or somebody like that, or any high wealth person that you've ever seen, little clips on YouTube, and you're gonna see the guy that's walking behind him, that's his close protection detail. And then the third part is gonna be the advanced team, all right? So, and that's where I'm gonna primarily focus in on this video, is talk about the advanced team, because to me, the advanced team is the most important piece of this whole protection detail operations. Why, you say? So imagine you're gonna go visit someplace you've never been, and you're a high wealth person, or you're the president or whoever, and you might even have threats upon you, okay? There's threats. And just any cabinet level person in the United States right now is a threat. There's a threat against them because they represent the United States. So any of our enemies, no matter if it's the lowest level cabinet member that you might not even know who they are, their names, if they're represented by the government, they have a threat against them. So it doesn't matter at what level they are, okay? So, and that includes high wealth people. And that advance team is so important because they're going to be the ones that are going to go to that location, wherever that protectee, that principal is going to go. And they're going to go there prior, all right? And sometimes it could be days prior. Sometimes it could be weeks. And in some cases it could be an hour or maybe 10 minutes prior, okay? Just depending if it's just short notice movement, all right? Now, generally speaking, when you're on a protection detail, especially the higher level they are, you're gonna get an itinerary of their movement. So you're gonna know ahead of time when they're gonna do whatever they're gonna do. So that gives you time to be able to prepare and to do your thing. So when you're talking about the president, or even Charlie Cook for this matter, they know in advance, days, weeks, maybe even longer, that they're going to be doing these particular operations. So they're going to send an advance team out to that particular location. So in this, I'm going to say this goes for anybody, but especially with the protection, the Secret Service, okay? So if the president's going to go someplace and do a speech, all right? So what the Secret Service does is they send a team, an advance team out, and they're going to have a team that's going to be focused in on the hotel where he stays, and they're going to have a team that's going to be focused in on, maybe they're going to have a team at the hospital, all right? Then you're going to have a team that's going to be focused in on the venue, okay, wherever the president's going to go, all right? And then you might have a team focus in on the motorcade aspect of it, all right? And I'm sure there's other stuff that they have going on, you know, but those are the key points, okay? Whatever venues the president's going to go to, they're going to have a team there. There's going to be one person in charge of that particular site, okay? So when they talk about the hotel, they're going to go over rooms, they're going to go over room assignments for where the president's going to stay, where his staff, where they're going to position their Secret Service agents, you know, where they're going to position the Secret Service security detail, you know, around the president's room, and then, you know, the outer perimeter security of the hotel. They're going to coordinate with local police, they're going to get with local military if that's, you know, part of it, and they're going to coordinate this whole security package, okay, at that particular site. And not only that, but they're going to be going with the president's staff, and they're going to be working with them, and they're going to be going to where all these meetings are at, okay, and they're going to be figuring out, you know, how the president's going to walk from point A to point B and where he's going to sit at. And then they're going to be looking at, you know, exit routes, you know, where, if they have to get the president out, where can they, you know, take him to, what routes, okay? They're going to be looking for hard points within the building. So if something happens and there might be a threat on the president, where can they take the president and put him in that building to protect them until they figure out how to get him out of there? Because sometimes it might not be wise to take him from maybe a building where you might have secure locations within the building, to take him outside, you know, get him outside in the public view, or get him on the road where it might be more dangerous, right? So, but they might not be able to move him until maybe they secure a pathway too. So you have to designate those hard points, okay? And it could be multiple, especially if you're dealing with multiple floors. And then routes, you got to know your different routes, and then you got to place your vehicle in certain places to where if you have to evac the president, he can go to that vehicle. And you might have different, you know, exit points covered with different vehicles in case, you know, if you have to go out your primary exit, maybe you can't go that way because maybe there's bad guys over there. So then now you got to do an alternate exit, all right? So you're going to have vehicles stashed on those exits, all right? Then you're going to have security around that, okay? So that applies generally for any protection detail that does it. It's just, like I said, it depends on how many assets you have, okay? So you have that protection detail, and then they work the venue, and then they also coordinate with the hospital. So they might visit multiple hospitals, and the Secret Service and a lot of the higher agencies, they already had designated hospitals in every city, okay? And so they have an advanced team out there, and then they work on being able to communicate with the protection detail if something happens and need to rush the president to the hospital, they're already communicating. Okay, and then they work with the security of the hospital. So if there's any security in any place, they're working with them. All right, but that's how basically it goes. So the Secret Service has one person in charge of every single location with multiple people underneath them. In the situation with the president at his speech, okay, where he gave in Pennsylvania, you're going to have one Secret Service agent that was in charge of that whole advance team, all right? And what they're doing is they're talking to the local police, the federal police, and any other kind of assets that they're able to get a hold of and be part of their outer perimeter of security, okay? Because if the president's going to speak here, there's going to be concentric layers of security around him, okay? So you're going to have his protection detail around him, then you're going to have another layer of security around him, and you're going to have another layer of security, and you're going to have layers of security that even go past outside of the venue to traffic intersections, and you're going to have people screening cars coming in and people coming in. So that's how in depth that goes, all right? So as that advance agent should be coordinated with the local law enforcement, and what they're doing is they're also giving them radios, or if they don't have enough, say, Secret Service radios to give to maybe local law enforcement, then maybe they can get a local law enforcement radio and then get one of the local law enforcement radios and hold it. So maybe that main Secret Service agent can have that radio to communicate directly with that law enforcement entity, all right? Or maybe they might have a CP post, a command post, where maybe they could channel information from the police into that post, and then that channels to the Secret Service and vice versa, right? So there's always ways to communicate. You just have to establish a communication chain, and if that means on lower level details, especially if you're private security or smaller details, especially if you're not doing like if your mission is, the information within it is not considered classified, then you can even use cell phone communication, text messages. That's not the best way to go, but that might be what you have to do. And in some cases, some protection details, they don't have encrypted radios, whereas the Secret Service, they have encrypted radios, meaning that a bad guy can't be trying to break in on their communication chain, okay, because the encryption part of it. But if you're a lower level detail, if you're a civilian, you might not have encryption communication, all right? So that advance agent is coordinating with the police, and then they're gonna say, I want you to put this person, I want you to put people in this building, and I want you to put people over here, and I want you to put people here, and I want you to do this, and I want you to do that. And then their job is to constantly check on that, especially before that protectee's coming into that environment. They're gonna make sure, okay, I have this building covered, I have that exit covered, I have people over here, I have this stairwell covered, I have the emergency vehicles stashed over here, I have the paramedics over here, I have this over here, I have everybody positioned a certain way, waiting for the president to come. All right, so that the president or whatever protectee should be coming into the most secure environment that they can. And with the Secret Service assets, that should be extremely secure, all right? So in the event of what happened with President Trump, lots of balls were dropped on that. And it comes down to that Secret Service agent that was responsible for the advance, okay? That advance agent dropped major balls on that, okay? And if the communication chain's not working very well between the law enforcement assets, whether they're local, state assets, then that's the Secret Service or whatever the advance agent's fault for that. They should have coordinated with that better. Okay, just like, I don't know if you remember, several years ago there was a softball game, I think it was a practice game between the Democrats and Republicans. And there was, I think, 2 Capitol Police officers that were there as kind of on a protection detail. Well, they didn't coordinate with the local law enforcement. At least I don't think they did. And they didn't have them come to help them provide protection, like outer protection. That would have helped them out a lot. Maybe even prevented that shooting that happened there. But anyway, so it's very important that advance team does their job and coordinate with the law enforcement or whatever assets. So that means, even if it's like little unarmed security, all right, that have radios. They might not be able to do anything with somebody with a gun, but they're a presence, okay? They're a deterrent. Their presence can help deter that. And if they have handheld radios, they can help notify that particular protection detail if they see anything suspicious, and then that protection detail can make the decision on what to do. So when you're looking at Charlie Cook, for instance, and what happened there. So as we know, you had the sniper up on top of the building, just like what would happen with President Trump. Nobody was on that building covering it. So I heard that Charlie Kirk's protection detail talked to the local campus police, and they said they were going to cover it. However, that protection advanced team agent or detail member should have been making sure that double, triple, quadruple check, making sure those officers were up on that roof, if in fact they talked about it prior, which anybody in protection would know that there's always potential for sniper attacks. So he or she should have made sure that he physically saw those police officers position people up there or close that entry point up to their roof, okay? So that's why you go there, days, weeks, you go there in advance, because you have time to make sure that they do that, if they say they're going to do it, you make sure that they do it. You make sure you bug them till you drive them crazy if you have to. Now, when you're a Secret Service agent or a Secret Service, you work for the Secret Service, you can pretty much tell everybody what to do and they do it. But when you're like a civilian protection detail, you have to ask nicely. But when you have money, you can pay for that protection, right? You might pay for those off-duty detail or off-duty officers to provide security details. So, but even when there's an event happening, and especially with somebody like Charlie Kirk, where there's a lot of controversy around it, the police are going to want to have better security, because they it's their backyard, okay? They don't want to have to deal with a lot of mess that happens, so they're going to be willing to work with them and to do what they're supposed to do and help them out as best as possible. And then in the event that those officers, or if you're working with the local police there and they don't have enough assets, meaning they don't have enough officers to help you, put somebody up there, well, then maybe you might have to hire a couple extra guys, part of your protection detail, to stand in those posts, to be the eyes on, okay? And like I said before, they might not even be armed, but they have a radio, and if they're a deterrent, meaning they're a body there, then if that bad guy had been planning to go up on that roof, but when they see somebody there with a radio, sunglasses, an earpiece, and they're looking around, they might decide that it's not a good option now, because now they're not going to be able to sneak up on that roof and take that shot, all right? So that's why the protection detail is the most important part. They're setting everything up for that protectee, whether it be the president or Charlie Cook, to come into that environment and do whatever they got to do in the safest way possible. Now, I will tell you this, if somebody is desperate enough or really wants to do it, they can attempt an assassination, even with the Secret Service there. It's possible. That's why the agents, whoever's in charge of that advanced team, has to be smart, okay? They have to be thorough. They have to look at that scene and analyze it like if they were going to attack it themselves. That's what I do. If I look at a scene, I'm going to look at it like a bad guy, and I'm going to figure out all the weaknesses of that environment, and I'm going to look at it like how I would attack it. How would I attack anybody coming to help save that protectee? And then I'm going to think like that, and then I'm going to try to build my security package around that to kind of plug those holes, so to speak. So that's the way that's really work, is that advanced team is the most important piece of a protection detail. Because the people that are traveling with the protectee, the agents that are traveling with the president, okay, or in my case, the secretary, they never been to that site, okay? The only way that they might get information about that site prior is if that advanced team sent them maybe like a advanced package, and maybe they might have maps, and maybe photos of the actual venue and walking routes and, hard points established here, all this information they would need, or maybe even take videos. And they can send that back to that protection detail that's coming with that protectee. But a lot of cases that might not be the case. And even if you look at a video or a PDF document with all this detail on it, it still might not be easy for you to understand what you're getting into, because maybe the building or the site's pretty complex. Maybe there's multiple floors and the room configuration is pretty complex, and you have multiple buildings, and everything's everywhere. And plus, they have a lot of things they have to focus in on too before they leave. So they're relying on that advanced team to provide them with the most important and needed information as possible, okay? And try to get them as much of the information before they go there. But essentially, they're coming in blind, okay? So they're expecting that advanced team to provide that bubble of security for them, to have everything set up, all right? From the motorcade that are gonna pick that protectee up at the airport or wherever they're coming in from, and for them to be able to travel from wherever they're getting picked up to whatever venue they're gonna go to. Now, during the motorcade package, if you have like a civilian type security detail, you might ask local law enforcement to help you. You might even have to pay them. Like I said, you pay off-duty officer to provide that security, right? Escorts. With the Secret Service, they get that, and they have their own escort, their own motorcade package, all right? They already have that. They fly with that, all right? And then what they do too is they might draw upon local Secret Service agents that work in that city that their main job is not protection at that point. They might be doing investigating crimes, right? And they might pull them to help out with the protection detail at that particular city, right? And then they might call upon other federal agents. So they're working with a lot of people that the actual president's protection detail and advanced team don't work with and train with on a regular basis. So they're having to get these people together, and that's where the advanced team is important, because if they're getting a bunch of people that have never worked together and they might not understand the operations, their job is to make sure that they put all the pieces together and they understand the operations, right? And that way they know what the plan is. They know exactly what's going to happen when the president or whoever the protectee arrives. They know what every single stage of that particular venue session is, okay? Whatever the function is, they know all the steps, and they know how it's going to work, okay? But that's the advanced agent, because the protection detail guys, they can't. They're busy being around that protectee or the president, wherever he's at. So they got to work on that. So they're focusing on that immediate area around the president or the protectee. And let me tell you, when you're constantly observant, looking for threats nonstop, especially if you go to like a big event where there's like 100 or 1,000 people in a conference hall, and you have to stand there and you're looking at everybody and you're looking at potential threats. You're seeing movements coming from your left and right, and you're constantly looking, and then if you have to also drive too, okay? Some protection details, they might not have enough agents to have dedicated drivers. So one driver that's in not the limo, but the follow vehicle or the front vehicle or the rear vehicle might have to get out and go inside and help provide that close protection around the protectee. They might have to do that too on smaller details. I've had to done that before. That's not the optimal operations, because really you're supposed to have drivers in every vehicle, and they stay there because they have to get out, or they might have to go and pick you up at another location. But when you have smaller details, you got to work with what you have, okay? You have to do more with less. That's why like a smaller detail has the same responsibilities as a bigger detail like Secret Service, but they end up learning to do more things because they're smaller and they have to do it, okay? So that close protection detail, they're focusing right there at that moment, okay? That's why that advanced team is so important. So when it comes to the attempted assassination of President Trump and the assassination of Charlie Kirk, the advanced team dropped the ball, okay? Especially with the attempted assassination of President Trump, all right? With all those assets with the Secret Service had. There was no excuse for that. I don't care. There was no excuse for that. They had time to work that. They had assets to help negotiate that. They've done those types of operations so many times that it should be like second nature. And there was no excuse for that. So they dropped the ball big time on that. And then with Charlie Kirk's particular situation, the advanced team also dropped the ball in a way because if they had a verbal thing or they had it worked out with the police, campus police to provide security up on that rooftop, then they should have double checked it, okay? But I don't know the inner workings of what they did or didn't do. I'm just saying that that's the way it should have been done, okay? And look, let's face it, it's difficult, okay? It's difficult to do that job, especially when you have high profile people that you have to protect. When you have people that have death threats on them, especially the president and Charlie Kirk, okay? It is difficult. And especially when you're in a college campus and you can't search everybody. Secret Service can, anybody that even comes within, so many feet of the president are gonna get, they're gonna get searched, okay? They're gonna get searched for weapons and all kinds. There's probably 300 or 400 meters away. Like I don't know their parameters, how far out it goes. But anybody that's gonna get close to the president is gonna get searched for weapons. Now, for the Charlie Kirk thing, that's not going to happen. Maybe they would, maybe they didn't. I don't know, but for the most part, probably not, because they don't have the same assets and they don't have the same pool that the Secret Service. The Secret Service can tell anybody what to do, and they're going to do it. You can't do that with a civilian. Okay, you can ask nicely, and you can hope that the police or whoever that you're working with will help you out as much as possible. But that's not always the way it works. Okay. So that's my breakdown of how protection detail works and how, more importantly, an advanced team, the most important piece of that. And like I said, I'm not trying to throw stones at any particular individual or say anything bad about the Secret Service or Charlie Kirk's detail. It's just more in the lines of where I think the ball was dropped and who's responsible for those pieces. And things happen, all right? Things happen in the moment, okay? Maybe they had a police officer that was supposed to be up there and maybe the guy decided to walk away. Or maybe at the last minute they switched them out or needed them over there because maybe there's a disturbance. Maybe that happened, I don't know. But I'm just saying that should have been coordinated. At minimum, if the police can do it, maybe Charlie Kirk's team should have had one person up there, all right? So I hope you got something out of this. I hope you, got a better insight about how executive protection detail operations work, especially when it comes to, this particular scenarios with the president and Charlie Kirk. And I was devastated by both situations, especially with Charlie Kirk. Okay, that was Charlie Kirk was a great person. Didn't deserve that. I don't care what he stood for. I agree with what he stood for, most of it. He was a positive person. He didn't deserve that. Nobody deserves that, okay? Even people I don't like, I don't want to see that happen to them. There's presidents that I do not like, but I would never want to see them assassinated, okay? So I'm just letting you know how somebody that is or was in executive protection for many years looks at this and how I did those operations and how I've seen it done. Anyway, please like, subscribe, share, follow, and pass this on to anybody that you think might like it. But until the next video, stay safe.